I wanted to chat about footy again because we had a little chat about footy last week and I enjoyed it. So we chatted about Klopp and FSG and as usual, you know, we are. I would say on the scale of like I always say this to people, it's not black and white. You don't have to pick one side or the other. Like, but on the scale, I would say we're up towards the supporter end of, well, definitely high end of the supporter end of Klopp, and up there for FSG as well. Both can be criticised. But since we spoke last week, the news broke about Bellingham, which Joe did disappointing stuff that we're probably not going to buy him now. And then I read an article other people might have seen about Sadio Mane buying on the BBC website, chinning Leroy Sané, but also that he's gone shit basically. Like he scored 11 in 32, which isn't that bad. But the more shocking thing is he's come off the bench in 8 of those appearances this season. He's a bit part player. And so I wanted to have a little chat about criticism, which me and you don't usually do, but like what's the reasonable criticism of Klopp and FSG? Because I think they both can be criticised. I know people love criticising FSG. I think Klopp there's reasonable criticism of Klopp now as well, I think, and there has been for a while. FSG is the easy one with the money, not enough money spent. My thing about Bellingham is surely if there was ever a player to put more into and just say, all right, if we were going to spend X amount, we'll put 50 more million in. We'll just put that in to get this lad. He's 19. Everyone says he's a generational talent. He's like built to be a modern footballer for us. And if there was ever a guarantee of a resale value on a footballer, it's this, isn't it? I know there's always risks, but he's 19. Like you could keep him for 4 years and sell him to Real Madrid for double that. What's your take? What's your view on it?
I think it is disappointing, and you know, I think some people fall into a trap when they talk about Liverpool of almost like always defending them in some way, you know, like every single thing saying, oh no, it's Sam, we'll just get these other players, like and almost saying like people who are disappointed and angry about not getting Bellingham are like wrong to do so. I don't think they are at all. You know, it's one of them where I think everyone's a little bit right on this. So like if you're fuming about it, I think you've got every right to be fuming. Equally the ones who are saying, well, this just means we can go out and get X, Y and Z. Well, they're right as well, because that's probably what they will do. But I just think like, you know, it being the chase of Bellingham was sort of the reason why we hadn't bought any midfielders. Do you know what I mean? And so it kind of feels like we've wasted the season here.
Yeah.
You know, all our eggs were very much in the basket of Bellingham coming. And like, you know, we've had all the sort of like, you know, Henderson and Trent and all the rest of it sort of like, you know, knocking around with them, smiling about them, talking about them. The manager, you know, I know he likes to say in press conferences, I don't talk about these things. He talked about Bellingham though before. He talked about what a talent he was. And so the club as a collective had allowed that beast to grow, that he was coming, that he was a target, that he was the number one target. So to now sort of say, well, how come you're all kicking off? Well, they're kicking off because you sold it to us that he was coming. And we were sort of prepared to accept a bit of a shitty season on the basis that he was coming. So to now say, oh no, we're going to buy a couple of lads from Brighton and you know, and someone from Bayern Munich who you've never heard of, who doesn't get a game every week. You know, well, it doesn't, of course people are going to be disappointed. Like I kind of, you know, I get the argument about like, they're not going to sell him for cheap. He's got 2 years left on his contract, hasn't he, I think. And Klopp was sort of talking about like guarantees, wasn't he? So he was I think reading between the lines on what he was saying, it sounded like he was saying we could go hard on him and we might still not get him. And that's sort of a bit of a deviation from what we sort of understood, I thought, because it did seem to be that he was definitely coming. He wanted to come. He'd chosen Liverpool. He wanted to play under Klopp, all of that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden the rug's pulled away. And on FSG as well, like they have been stingy and they have been conservative with the money. And like, you know, you can point at like, you know, a new training ground. You can point at the fact that, you know, the ground itself is going to be 61,000 and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, those big projects like that, an owner can choose to pay for them, can't they? And that's a sort of a way round FFP, if you like. Well, they didn't do that, did they? They loaned Liverpool the money at a low cost to do it. But ultimately, the club's paying for it itself. So they didn't put in that money. Other owners have put in that money in that situation. So they are stingy, aren't they? You know, they are conservative. And I think like the sort of rules that Klopp has to play by do hinder him. You know what I mean? But you said, and you're right to say, I think there should be some criticism of Klopp, because I think one of his few faults is that he's too loyal. I think he's too loyal to players.
I was going to ask you that, because it's interesting that Joe Mane basically wanted to go, didn't he? But clearly he's fallen off a cliff as well, at the same time as all of our other players have fallen off a cliff. And I wanted to ask you about the loyalty question, but there was another one I wanted to ask about, which is, and maybe it ties into loyalty, but I don't know whether there's, for me, I'm sort of grappling with this myself. Is it arrogance, or is it naivety, or is it just loyalty? That this literally happened at Dortmund, and we've seen him asked about this in the past, and he's got an arrogance about him when he answers this question, even very defensive about it, like it's nothing the same. And you're like, well, I'm sorry, mate, it is. And you didn't learn from that. Like whatever's gone on with we had Chouameni last year, which I think ties into the guarantees thing in the press conference, he said, because by all accounts they were all in on Chouameni, weren't they? And maybe in their heads it was Chouameni last summer and Bellingham this summer, and we'd have an unbelievable midfield then, wouldn't we?
But even with the chase of him, like it was like they didn't get him, and then went and bought forwards.
Yeah,
and it was like, but what are you doing then?
Yeah, but that's what I mean as well. Like that ties into that. Remember when he listed all of his midfielders, and he's like, I don't need a midfielder. And you're like, well, you were just trying to buy a dead expensive one, so you clearly do think you need one. Yeah. So there's something going on here, and that's where I flip it, because it's dead easy to go not enough money. But there was like, how much did Chouameni go for? Was he an £80 million player? I don't know. I'm guessing at that, but he was big money, wasn't he? Well, that money was there, and you could have still just gone and bought a midfielder, and you didn't. You went out and bought forwards, and in January,
Nunes, Gakpo, Diaz.
So where does that tie in? So I mean, you just said it, but are you he's too loyal, man? Do you think there's an issue about the 7-year thing as well? Because the way we play footy, if you compare it to City, I know they've got more money than us to spend, but they have made. Do you know, there's been a theme over a few weeks where we've talked about building a second side, but Guardiola's built a second side gradually, hasn't he? He is like,
it's easy for him.
I mean, he's got a lot of money.
Easier,
but he's still done it.
Yeah,
like the thing that's annoyed me about Klopp, I think, is we stopped buying Wijnaldum's. Do you know what I mean? We stopped buying the players that got us to where we were great in the first place. If we couldn't get Chouameni last year, why didn't we just go out and get two £30 million midfielders?
That's what looks wrong, isn't it? I think the strategy behind all of this, all of a sudden looks a little bit worrying. Do you know what I mean? We've gone from being like, what looked like one of the best run clubs in the league to one where the strategy's gone off kilter a little bit. And you've got to factor in, obviously FSG were trying to sell, and then all of a sudden it was, they wanted another investor. But, it seemed pretty certain. They were trying to sell, they were trying to get out. And so then you'd have to wonder about, well, is that still the case? And sort of how much is their heart in it now? Do you know what I mean? I mean, they won't want their asset to, sink too far, if you like. But equally, like, are they really all in on like winning the league, on winning European Cups, on truly backing the manager? I think that's maybe up for debate, because, they were looking to get off. And so, you can't just sort of go, well, we're not now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the worrying thing for me, but I was chatting to one of my uncles about this during the week, is that when, the way we're run to compete, and I've said in the past, but like we've competed with like a super, like basically drugged up superpower, financially doped, and we've beaten them. Like we've beaten them, which is unbelievable. But to do that, everything had to be so right. Do you know what I mean? We're not just the manager and the players, but the behind the scenes. The worrying thing for me is, I was chatting to people about the Beatles, like even use them as an example, right? The Beatles come together, it's almost like magic. Like these four lads come together, but it's not just them, it's the manager and the people behind the scenes. And there's just this magical blend for a few short years, and then it's gone. And once it's gone, no one can recreate it. Paul McCartney can't recreate it. He's been trying ever since to write those type of songs. He's written with other people. It's never been the same. My concern is, like, is it possible to recreate that magic behind the scenes? Because the more worrying thing for me is, like, Julian Ward, who replaced Michael Edwards, is leaving at the end of the season. Why hasn't he already been replaced? I know. Do you know what I mean? If I go back to the corporate world, if that was a big law firm, they'd already have his replacement.
100%.
Because you can't let him do confidential deals for you, surely. You can't let him be... If he's running transfer dealings for us now, how much is he in on it? I know, like, people will say he's being professional, but we're all humans, aren't we? If he's got one eye on his next job or whatever, he's already been in interviews with Ajax. So how much time and dedication is there?
Well, we said last week, didn't we? It just feels like there's a lot to do and a lot to sort out. And, you know, like it's gone from, you know, you were sleeping soundly at night thinking about Liverpool, if you like, to now it's like, well, we've got to get all these players in. We don't know who they're going to be. There doesn't seem to be like a top target anymore. So it's gone from we're all in on Bellingham to an absolute range of players now.
Well, and basically every fucker's being linked with the club, isn't it? But the one that it's mad that it was Enrique, wasn't it? Who announced, he said months ago, is it Gravenbach? We're going to buy from Munich. He said he's got the same agent as Muscle and it's done. It's a done deal. But that's one of them where you're like, all of a sudden you're like, And I think if we'd have signed a player like him 2 seasons ago, everyone was just they're confident. Do you mean we trust the manager, we trust the backroom staff?
But there's so
but
many,
now if we buy him, I think there'd be
because he's not, you know, he feels like a project signing, doesn't he? Someone who like he's going to have to get up to speed and all that kind of stuff. Whereas Liverpool's situation in midfield is, it needs fixing urgently. It needs almost like, you know, someone taken from the very top shelf and thrown in, knowing as much as you can with any transfer that they can hit the ground running like. And I think, you know, we've gone from targeting someone who is like that to now targeting people that don't look like that. And I get the thing where he says, you know, we don't have to be the best team. You know, we don't have to be the best team to win the league because it's a system thing. But as you said, it, you know, it sort of took a while for the system to truly work, didn't it? I mean, okay, we got to 2 finals in his first season and we saw the players run harder and faster and all that kind of stuff. But it's the thing as well, isn't it, about, you know, like, it's the building the second team thing. So, like, is it easier to just come into a culture that's wrong and fix it? Is it as easy to sort of recreate the same culture again when, you know, like some people now probably sick of hearing Klopp and now I've heard all the things he's got to say, all the messages he's got to say. Yeah, they know the drill. Yeah, they know the drill. They know how you managed, and it maybe doesn't work as much anymore because again, that's a human thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, like you'll be in a job for years, and then, you know, after a while, you start looking at the people you're working with and think, I've heard this before. Nah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Bollocks.
Well, I remember reading this out ages ago on an Anfield Rap show. There's literally a quote in one of the books about Klopp from a Dortmund player where he said something, I can't remember which one it was, but he said something like, there comes a point where sooner or later someone asks you to do something again and you just go, no. It's just, you just stop wanting to say yes. And he was basically like, yeah, we couldn't be arsed anymore. And that's where the Mane thing is a big piece for me in this, is that you can look at us all you want and what's going on in Liverpool, but literally a lad who left us at the end of that spell has gone to another big club under different managers in a different system and it's been shit compared to what he was before. They're all basically saying like he's a shadow of his former self. Tuchel's come in and said, yeah, he's sensitive and he needs building up and all that, and even at his level. But they'd have thought they were buying a guarantee, wouldn't they? And so that for me is a management point. The way we play footy is you're running these lads into the ground.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, the 63 games and all that, you know, it was a thing because, you know, I went to those cup finals. Well, I didn't go to the European Cup final. I went to the domestic ones. And like they were out on their feet.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that extra time against Chelsea, I don't think they had a shot. I don't think they hardly ran into Chelsea's half. They were just knackered. They were just waiting for the penalty shootout because they had absolutely nothing left. So, you know, could you not see or not predict that after 63 games and after running all those lads into the ground, there was going to be a drop-off? And that being the case then, why didn't you buy a midfielder?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
And that's where for me it comes back to that.
Yeah, we're full circle, aren't we? We're back to Bellingham again because we were sold the idea that the reason we didn't is that we were all in on Bellingham, and now we reached this stage after a shit season and we're not. And that's disappointing, isn't it? And it's back to, again, it's just being honest. You know, like if we have another season like this one, the people will point at the manager, and I love him, and I wouldn't want anyone else to try and turn us round. But we know how it works, and we know what the football world's like. We know what the media's like. You know, FSG gave Kenny the boot. They didn't care, and they just said.
Well, I was just going to say that all legends at the end of the day. I can't remember who it was I saw. It might have been Mourinho or something like that. He basically said we all get sacked in the end. There's very few managers in the history of footy. Like Guardiola's one of them, isn't he? I mean, well, Klopp is one of them right now who doesn't get sacked. But sooner or later, if you hang around, the chances are in this job you're going to get sacked because there'll come a point unless you decide to leave. That is the other thing with Klopp. I could imagine, because he did that with Dortmund, didn't he? I can imagine him saying, and I think that's the thing with FSG. I think they'll say to him, do you still believe you can do it? Because if you believe you can do it, we'll back you. But if you get to the point where you're like, nah, I can't. Because that was my big thing months ago. I said to everyone, when it came out he was signing his new contract, and he basically started referencing like why he would stay. It felt like he was referring to that end of Dortmund where they basically did you need a new manager or you need a whole new team. And this time I'm staying. So it was like, i.e. we need a whole new team.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, well, you do need 5-6 players. So I can understand them why they go, okay, on a numbers basis, it's like, okay, well, we're going to spend that £100 million across more players. But for me, when it's this type of player, you go, no, just put an extra £100 million in because you've got it. Like this is my big thing with it. Like that annoys me about it. Then it's not like they don't have the money.
I know.
They do have the money. And if John Henry said to me, like sitting here going, yeah, but FFP, I'd go to him, oh, fuck off, John. Why are we still doing FFP when nobody else is? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Just find a way. Yeah. Put Bellingham on a 10-year contract. Like, I love the way this fella at Chelsea's just come in and gone, well, there's an easy way
around
to this,
it,
isn't it? Put everyone on dead long contracts.
The close on that particular thing, aren't they? But it was available to Liverpool to do it.
Exactly, and we didn't.
I know. And that's back to the conservatism of how it's run.